Hello boys and girls. I'm here, Miss Jones, today to talk to you about a very important lady in Ireland. Her feast day, a special day dedicated to her, is coming up this week on Monday. You probably know who I'm talking about. It's St. Brigid. I want to tell you about when she was a little girl and something very important that happened to her. St. Brigid was a lovely girl. She was kind, she was gentle, she was caring. She was everything that God would want us to be. If there was somebody that was poor, she would give them something to eat. If there was somebody that was sick, she would help them in any way she could. St. Brigid was so kind and she wanted to be a good girl, the best that she could be. As Brigid grew up, she decided she wanted to spread the word of God. She had heard about God from St. Patrick, and she decided she wanted to build a monastery. That's a little bit like a church. So she went to the ruler of the land, the person that was in charge at the time. He was the King of Leinster. Now, even though Brigid was a very, very kind girl, this King of Leinster was not so kind. She went to the king and she said, "Can I have some land to build my church?" He laughed at her. He said, "Ha! No, you cannot." She said, "Please, oh please, I want to spread the word of God. I want to tell people about what God has told us. I want people to be good and kind and generous like me." He said, "Do you see that cloak on your back?" He said, "If you put that cloak down on the ground, you can have as much land, as much grass, as much greenery as that cloak covers." But her cloak wasn't big enough to build a church on. Look at the size of it. That would never cover enough land. But she decided she would do this anyway. So she got 4 friends to take the 4 corners of her cloak. They stood and they walked east, north, south and west. To 4 corners of the cloak they went and they pulled it. And with that, something magical happened, something that she didn't expect. The cloak, it began to grow and grow and grow and grow. And the chieftain couldn't believe it. He was the king, he was the chieftain, he was the ruler of the land, and he was so greedy he hadn't wanted to share his land. But the cloak, it just kept on growing and growing and growing and growing. It grew all over the land, as far as the eye could see. So much so that Brigid had to shout out for the cloak to stop growing. She had way more land than she would ever possibly need to build her monastery and build her church. With that, her friends stopped walking away. They knew she had enough land to build her church, and that is exactly what she did. She picked an area that was flat and she decided to build her church there. And when she built her church, everybody from far and wide who didn't know about God, how good he was and how good he wanted us to be, could come and learn about God, and learn about all the things that he wanted us to be. Brigid was such a happy lady. She devoted her life and she spent the rest of her life being as kind and generous as she always was, but also telling people about the word of God. So, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed the story of St. Brigid's cloak. You could have a little look online and there are some pictures here to give you some ideas if you wanted to draw a picture of your own growing cloak, spreading all over the land like it did in the story. Now, St. Brigid was also famous for a few other important things. She is most famous for her St. Brigid's cross that she made from rushes. They're like reeds, long, thick grasses that are found near streams. You might even see them up the mountains. I was up the mountains last week when it was snowing and I saw some rushes and collected some there. So she made a St. Brigid's cross by weaving these rushes together. And in the pictures here, you can see some made from pipe cleaners, made from rushes themselves, and made from lots of different things. She first made this cross for a pagan, somebody who didn't know about God.
She wanted to teach him about God, and the St. Brigid's cross has been made famous ever since. Now, another important thing to remember about St. Brigid is she is Ireland's only female patron saint. So that's important to remember. We have another male patron saint, St. Patrick, but St. Brigid is Ireland's only female patron saint. So the next time you go out on a little walk or an adventure, when you see some daffodils, some crocuses, maybe some tulips, and all the signs of spring, you can remember St. Brigid, because her special date, her feast day, and the day that we remember her is the first day of spring, coming up next Monday. So the 1st of February marks her special day as well as the first day of spring. Hope you've learned lots of things about St. Brigid today, and maybe you could share some of these things with your mum and your dad.